Morning. Thank you guys all for being here. Certainly, first and foremost, want to express deep gratitude for our residents, our citizens, the people of Pensacola. To have your overwhelming support certainly means so much to me, and I know to our administration. And I say all the time, it's the honor of a lifetime to be able to get to do this job, serve as your mayor. Want to take a moment too to recognize the other candidates in the race. Of course, I know now twice from experience putting your name on any ballot certainly takes courage and effort and volunteers and all of that work. So successful or unsuccessful, certainly respect their willingness to step into the arena and serve. Over the course of the campaign, I know it can be distracting, certainly for us, and I know for you guys in the media and citizens out there about the sentiment and how maybe negative sentiment and how people feel in social media worlds or circles. But the nice thing, and I think it really resonated last night, is the true feelings about Pensacola aren't in all of that online noise, but they really take place at kitchen tables and at living rooms. It takes place when you feel safe in a city, or when your kid is in college and calling home and figuring out that this is somewhere that they want to live, and that those are where we make our opinions and form our opinions as citizens as a whole. Hoping that we can have opportunity for our job opportunity, high wage opportunity for our kids and grandkids, and so those our residents. I'm so thankful for them taking those sentiments to the ballot box yesterday, speaking clearly, and I think it sent a powerful and a positive message about our city that we're moving in the right direction. So today, campaign over, and the real work continues. To those who voted for me, and certainly same goes for those who did not. My commitment is to be a mayor for everybody, all 55,000 people who live here, and now is the time to come together as a united city. We have a lot to be proud of, and there's always room to grow. There's room for me to be a better mayor, for us to be a better administration, to operate a sharper and more efficient city hall, and to run a better city. So this is no different than 4 years ago. We remain coachable as a city. We listen, and we take that attitude and that self-awareness and that aggressiveness to be better as a city into these next 4 years as well. So certainly want to, again, thank our residents for their trust, their support, and the belief in our future, and looking forward to get back into work starting this morning. A few other things I want to run through with you. I want to acknowledge the REAP. I know we had a crazy week last week, obviously election last night, but the New Horizon Village last week getting done at REAP. I want to thank our partners there, also at our COC, Opening Doors Northwest Florida, and putting those 14 pallet shelters on West Blunt Street. And we'll keep working with REAP and other partners on transitional housing to put some more of those pallet shelter units in. And so we'll have a podcast coming out today to talk more about housing affordability and some of those different efforts like the pallet shelter. So we're very excited for that. Hollice T. Williams, there has now been 2 bid openings on Hollice T. Williams. There was one main one last week. There's a second project that's got some of the trails and stuff like that, a much smaller version, but that bid opening was yesterday. So really the update for you guys in the media is we will see work very, very soon on Hollice T. Williams. Again, we have deadlines with those grant funds, and we're fine on those, but we promised the citizens we'd get going on that, and we will be. So looking forward to that. We will close on Malcolm Yonge probably today. I just actually signed the closing documents this morning. We're on my desk. So if for some reason there's a slow courier or whatnot, it'll be tomorrow. But I would venture to guess that it will the official closing on Malcolm Yonge property will be today. So again, been a long journey and a heavy lift to do something unprecedented in our city to get that many houses permanently affordable, but very, very excited to be here. The after-school program for Parks and Rec opens. We still actually have room in our after-school program for free after-school care. Obviously very important out there for our residents, and that that comes free thanks to the support of Escambia Children's Trust. So that free after-school care is provided as a scholarship to up to 175 qualifying children, ages 5 to 12, attending after-school programming at Cobb, Gold Point, and Woodland Heights. So for more on that, on those locations, school bus transportation, registration forms, and more, it's pcola.co/after-school. And you can certainly get it on our social media platforms as well, but or reaching out to those individual community centers, and they can get you in the right direction. But certainly appreciate the media getting the word out there. We got free spots for after school care. We know we have families in need that as things get more and more expensive, certainly want to make sure that they're taking advantage of that. Pool season's wrapping up. About 2.5 weeks from now. Grateful for our partners at Northwest Florida YMCA for their staffing of Hunter and Roger Scott pools. Attendance figure so far this season has us at 23,116 visits. So that's a lot of folks going in. And that's why they're a great asset. We appreciate, again, all the effort to get, Parks and Rec Department and YMCA to make that possible. Also, the permanent restroom facility at Roger Scott should be delivered in December, and you'll probably see site work happening in October. So plenty of time for the following pool season, of course. The EPA is planning a meeting at Sanders Beach Community Center on August 25th. So they're going to host a public meeting from 6 to 8 at the Sanders Beach Community Center around ACW, of course, and the cleanup plans for Superfund site. We are finally at the part where you're going to start to see some of that work taking place, some of the yard scraping, some of those things that have been planned. There's not a change in that procedure, but again, there's always been, as we know, for many, many years now, some time lapses in the plan being announced and then things actually happening. So we want to make sure that the surrounding neighborhood is aware. So that's August 25th, 6 to 8 p.m. at Sanders Beach on ACW. Pete Thorpe, the remedial project manager for Region 4 EPA, will be there. And you recall, you guys, I think, reported that the $8.6 million that's anticipated in fiscal 26 to close that delta of funding to get phase 1 complete at ACW was already announced. And EPA does oversee the design and implementation of the remediation plan as well as funding. So we are really a third party to this, I think is the short way to say that. So we facilitate anything EPA needs to be successful in that, but in terms of moving dirt, where it goes, procedure, timeline, schedule, funding, all of those aspects of the ACW project are going to be run by the feds, by EPA. So as we get information, we'll certainly convey that to you guys. Cobb Center renovations are complete. Direction 25, another deferred maintenance. Again, we talk about Malcolm Yonge closing. We've really put these two together because they had the same problems. We allowed Malcolm Yonge in previous years to get to a point of no return with the glulam arches that you see in those old gymnasiums. Cobb Center has the same ones. Fortunately, as we started to take deferred maintenance seriously, we were able to catch that one in time and be able to save it. Still, it's a $1 million renovation to be able to save those arches. And you recall there were other numbers thrown around about Malcolm Yonge that had no validity to them. This Cobb Center was in much better shape than Malcolm Yonge ever was, or anywhere close to, and it was about $1 million fix. So that was the repair and restoration of the glulam arches, glue laminated structural arches supporting the gymnasium roof. It also had repair of deteriorated structural wood and roof decking, replacing the curved gymnasium roof, and replacement of deteriorated windows and exterior doors, and repairs to gutters, downspouts, and drainage-related components. There is future work to be done at Cobb Center, which includes parking lot resurfacing and some other facility improvements, but that was the big one. And if we didn't want it to see the same fate where it was unsavable, unsalvageable, we had to get that done. So thank you to our Parks and Rec team. Our facilities team has been very much on that, and our partners. Quick Birdon update. We had a great meeting, productive meeting with Jamie Bruce, the CEO of Birdon. The entire company came in from Australia, was here. We had about a 2.5-hour meeting with the leadership team, just going over first getting some information on the noise study that we have requested to make sure that there isn't going to be any negative noise impacts. That was a non-starter for me from day one. And I appreciate them adhering to that and understanding and respecting that. So they were able to give us some of what they have one more kind of alternate that they wanted to look at that's still pending. But there will be a presentation when they get that final piece. There will be a public presentation, probably at an agenda conference, where the noise study team will come in and give the results of that. And also bear in mind, we have hired our own, at the port, we have our own consultant that is a noise study expert. There's a very fancy term for that. You guys will have to look it up for me, but of what the title of that is. But we have our own, someone representing the city that is reading these results and making sure that they're analyzed correctly and that we agree on what it says. So obviously, we know that the harmony of a job-creating port and its proximity to our downtown matters, and that's why it was really something very high on our list. We're going to do due diligence on the results, and again, they have one more little small part that they're going to look into. And the status of the grant agreement is we're targeting the October 1 Triumph board meeting for final approval. So that's the third and final step with Triumph. And then we talked about the noise study, but it was a 2.5-hour meeting because we were going through kind of some of the final parts of our lease agreement as well. Us getting our lease finalized isn't absolutely required to get the third step of Triumph, but I kind of like having both of those done and completed before we move with any of those steps. So goal right now, October 1 Triumph meeting, and then we'll have a finalized lease to bring to council to get up and going and get construction going. So that, I know that's a lot. Thanks for bearing with me. That is everything I've got, I believe, right now, and happy to take your questions.
You had your priorities for your first term, and those obviously got you reelected. Going into your second term, are those priorities staying around the same, changing anything, any unfinished business? Yeah, I mean, I think high arching, it's going to be public safety always. It's going to be housing and affordability. I would probably add that, and part of affordability is jobs. Yeah, I think that overall umbrella stays the same, but where we are on the timeline of those is very different, and I feel very positive about. Again, 5 or 6 transformational projects, whether it be Baptist Hospital, the airport terminal. Palafox is now completed. We got the Sun Trail going along Bayfront Parkway, Hollice T. Williams, Birdon, American Magic's completed. That's 6 or 7 projects that we feel pretty good about. One of those or 2 of those getting done in a 4-year timeline. So we've got the Maritime Park happening, whether that's stadium improvements, just the Hard Rock, the $310 million investment. So lots of moving parts that are all good things. But I would say where we are on the timeline is the analogy I used last night is, we've got a bunch of pins set up, and I think this is really going to be focused on execution. I would say probably the one new thing would be significant bandwidth is going to be invested in this building on workforce development. I feel like if we had a do-over 10 years ago, 12 years ago with ST, we would have probably, I want to take that lesson learned, and I want to make sure that as Birdon comes on, even more jobs, even higher paying, that we know how important that is. And, I don't feel comfortable coming up and touting 2,000 jobs if we don't have the ecosystem to make sure that the Pensacolians are getting them. So we're looking forward to that meeting on August 26th that afternoon, where we're going to have the thought leaders around our state and our universities that are all going to be here in Pensacola to talk about that. And the goal being, let's set what are those 2 or 3 tracks we need to be on. So we'll have a lot of smart people that have done this around the state of Florida, to say, how do you help us prepare the city of Pensacola to be able to take on this demand? Because we know that the demand isn't just Pensacola. We've got Austell and Mobile. You've got Mississippi. This is Panama City, Eastern Shipbuilding over there. So this is a region that's going to have a very high demand on those jobs. So the good news of that is there's always a lot of tentativeness or concern about, well, can Pensacolians get these jobs? That's not even the problem that we're concerned about. The problem we're concerned about is if you're a Pensacolian, you want one of these jobs, you are absolutely going to have the opportunity for it. It's to make sure that we build that funnel for you that you can get that job quickly, and that you can be 20 or 21 years old, and you might be making more money than your parents ever made by the time you're 20 or 21, in a year with an annual salary, with these opportunities. So I would say if there's a new thing, it's still tied to jobs and that promise that we've made. But the tactic is going to be being heavily invested in making sure that workforce funnel is ready to go.
And you talk about that was like a lesson learned that now you want to give Pensacolians these jobs. Anything else that you would change from your first term going into your second?
Well, I mean, look, I think when you're in this job, you're always going to be hard on yourself about big or small things that, what could you do better? What would you do over again? We don't like to live and dwell in that world. You can't really for too long. You got to move on to the next thing. So, I think we always wanted to be better communicators today than we were yesterday, and more proactive. I think we've taken some steps in that, but that's always a tough challenge that you'll probably never perfect. But we try to do a good job of that. We try to be as transparent as possible, certainly, and we try to listen to all 55,000 constituents. And sometimes you just have to have the perspective to understand that there's no decision made on my desk or in this building that 100% of people are going to agree with. It just doesn't exist. Maybe when you come in when you're new, you kind of have this noble feeling that you're going to come up with the absolute best idea that 100% of people are going to agree on. You just make a lot of decisions that 50 or 60 or 70 or 80% of people might agree on. But again, with the vote last night, I think you might agree with one policy, or disagree with one policy or one issue, but for the most part, I think again, our voters spoke that all in all, we feel like the city's going in the right direction, and so no, I wouldn't say we have a whole lot of regrets, but I think we're always. Again, we remain coachable and self-aware, and we listen to our constituents, and when they're solutions oriented and they're collaborative with us, more times than you guys would know. Someone sending us an email or stopping us while we're at a baseball game and saying, "Have you thought about this at that stoplight?" Or those things happen all the time. They don't only happen in city council meetings, and so we can always challenge ourselves to be better listeners, be better communicators, and so we'll continue to strive for that.
Mayor, to that point, obviously your win was 30 points, almost over the next highest vote getter, but it was 3% from avoiding a runoff. So are you happy with that margin on avoiding a runoff, or what would you do differently as far as boosting that margin? Because it was like 47% of city voters voted for somebody else. So,
yeah.
I mean, have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, you could look at that both ways. I mean, I think I would hope anybody in this job would hope that 100% of people, would vote for you, or 90 or 80, but that's also never happened. So I've got to be realistic in that, and again, to be able to avoid a runoff twice, I think speaks volumes to what the 900 people that work in this building have done, and the level of standard and expectation they've set in terms of safety, in terms of our fire department, in terms of all of the things, not perfection, but all of the things that we provide, that our citizens wake up every day and say, what, or and certainly woke up yesterday, saying, hey, I like where we're going. I don't know that I had an expectation. It's not that 53 is good or bad, or 54. I mean, at the end of the day, having the resounding support of our city is good. Obviously, enough about statistics. You can't really do the math that way. With 5 people, it's not that that's 53-47. If it was with 2 people, that changes everything. We're happy to have another 4 years. I'm grateful to have another 4 years leading the city, and in whatever form that comes, I'm appreciative, and we'll move on.
Mayor, the mic's working. The curfew did not get through council. Were you surprised for the pushback, and what's the next step?
Yeah, I was surprised, mainly because what I hope for, and I would say with most people, we generally have, is a good communicative relationship where we say, hey, on August 3rd, this is what it says. Tell us if you have any issues. And I go back to your earlier question. There's lots of conversation that happens with council members before it gets to a meeting that says, hey, great idea. This is not, what's on that ordinance is not, none of that is uniquely from me personally at all. We put that in the hands of our city attorney to analyze what is or isn't legal and allowed. The vast majority of what you see in that ordinance is already state statute. It's a template that we ultimately use. We didn't change the times, all of that. But for example, the one I guess there was a lot of vague, hey, this needs more work. I think I can really only tie to one, the 18 versus 21-year-old. Perfect example. We don't have any heartburn over if that was the will of particular council members, and obviously I would imagine that the enforcement of this ordinance is going to probably happen as much in District 6 as any. That doesn't make anybody's opinion less valid, but if there was any council member that said, hey, look, we're uncomfortable about 18 or 21, if that would have been brought up as a motion or an amendment in the meeting, that would have, there was no pushback from us on that. But I think it just is a symbol of that's a conversation that could have happened on August 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th, all the way till the meeting, that we could have absolutely obliged and worked more collaboratively on. So my disappointment is more in, hey, we were very open and transparent about getting something that we could all get behind, and then to have a few folks come in and then that somehow nothing really changed from what we sent on August 3rd. Nothing literally changed since what we sent them on August 3rd. So I don't know if that's the most efficient way to do it. I would have obviously preferred, like we've done many times before, for us to have worked together and brought that forward, but that certainly is not a lack of trying from our city attorney's office or from the police department. It was just we didn't hear anything until we got into that meeting.
And so, heard back from the business community as far as, because I think they were expecting the ordinance to pass.
Yeah, and we were talking this morning kind of about what's next. I mean, probably, I certainly still support it. We haven't, with a lot of other distractions the last few days, we haven't had a whole lot of conversation about what's next. But I will say I still support it, and I still support collaboration on it. We obviously have had some internal conversations about the one substantive issue that was brought up, which was this 18 versus 21 thing. That again, we're generally comfortable with that. If that's the will of the council that enforces or sets ordinances, then whether that conversation happened when we would have preferred it or it happens after that, that's okay. Well, then let's have it and let's talk about that. But the reason I was really pushing to take a vote was because there is no science behind the argument that was made that this is somehow willy-nilly or that we knee-jerk react. Jan and our city attorney's office worked their tail off to get that there. And there had been conversations about this in previous years. This is not new. And there's a template in the state of Florida. So, to me, it was, I don't mean it was intentional by any council member, but I felt like that was kind of a slight to our staff. Forget me. I mean, to our staff that worked so hard to get something forward. And for it to just kind of be dismissed as like, well, it needs more work. We kind of, I didn't love that explanation because, again, it wasn't really tangible. It was just kind of like, well, should we sit on it for 3 months and then bring it back? I mean, does that make it seem like there was more work? We feel good about it. But I'm happy to collaborate, and we have an open mind about if there are some deviations, amendments that need to be made, that our law enforcement experts and our legal experts sign off on, that we're good there, then I'm all good with it.
Have you heard from any council members who wanted to see changes since the meeting?
I think Council President Patton reached out to David. They just connected. It wasn't because she wasn't willing to reach out to me or anything. I just know our administration has a conversation with Council President. But to this point, no, I have not heard any substantive things. The discussion we're having in the building right now is, of course, our city attorney's office is asking, all right, well, now what? Are we putting it right back on the agenda? So I hope, and that any of the 7 members that have any issues with it, that will kind of try it again and say, hey, let's work on this together and let's bring something that we all can sign off on and get behind. That's my hope, optimistically, that we can do that and go from there. But again, my intention is to bring something back, and if all we can do is bring something back that doesn't get the support, City Council's in charge of ordinances at the end of the day, so that I have to respect that. But I would say I fully intend to bring something forward. I'm not going to say yet whether that's going to definitely be the next meeting or anything like that. We got more work to do this week to figure that out.
And Pensacola police are still on board there. You have no pushback from them?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, quick research, you can see every major city in Florida has almost these exact hours. And really, if you look at it from a punitive standpoint, I know that was some of the discussion around fines for parents, fines for kids. If you go look at the spectrum of what's around Florida, there's actually fines on businesses that are catering up. So in the grand scheme of how heavy-handed this is compared to other cities in Florida, I would actually argue we're more middle to less. But again, what we really need to hear is the actual, not this needs work. What we need to hear from our council members who are in charge of ordinances is tell us tangibly, solutions-based, what issues you have. If the answer is, I can't support it. Councilman Baer, for example, he read a statement about it before the chief had spoken. And my only opposition to, he's certainly entitled to his opinion. My only opposition to that, he actually reached out. He was the first to reach out and say he wanted to write the ordinance about 2 weeks before. So that was obviously confusing. As you can imagine, we will go into a meeting where the only member that reached out specifically, proactively to say he wants to write it himself, our response to him was not, oh, we're going to write it. We weren't territorial. We just said, well, hey, great, this is already moving. We'll get it to you and redline it or whatever you want to do. And he got it on August 3rd, didn't hear a word, and then we read a Microsoft Word document at the thing. So, again, you have to ask him on how his position changed in a few days. But I would say, to Rick's question, probably took us by surprise, considering the biggest opponent of it was the one asking to write it. Not 6 months ago, but like 2 weeks before. So I at the end of the day, I want something that works for our police department, works for our legal department, and works for our council. So it is not a dead issue for me right now, but the buck stops with the council, and if that means we bring something that can't get the support, it is what it is. And I think we're better than that, and I think we can get to, collectively as a city government, that we can figure out how to work together and get something done.
So let's stay with the theme of surprises.
Yeah.
Public records show that y'all had an agreement with the county attorney's office and administration on an interlocal agreement on the Bay Center. The document that you had that your city administrator distributed on the June 17th is identical to what you gave to the council. Where do we go now? Are we going to make any progress on the Bay Center?
Again, I appreciate our team getting that document, and that's why I think
I can understand now why.
Right. We weren't trying to bull rush anybody. We weren't trying to surprise anybody. We didn't know there was a surprise to be had. We were just following kind of the timeline we had all worked through. So that's why I immediately pulled it, because it was to say, hey, this wasn't meant to be a surprise to any county commissioner or county staff or anything like that. We just didn't know it was a surprise necessarily. But where our feet are today, there's two things to understand. One, technically or legally speaking, there's no legal need to have this agreement. The reason we wanted this agreement is that when we went out for RFPs, if you're a design firm and you say, man, it's already hard enough to work with one government, do I want to bid on this project that has two governments in it that don't have to report to each other in some instances? Am I okay with that? And so that just adds more variability, more uncertainty for whether that's a contractor, a designer, an owner's rep, all those things that the county will end up having to bid out. And so it was really just to show, ironically, kind of we're arm in arm, hey, we're moving forward. And
when you go back and look at the April meeting, this is what you proposed as to set up guardrails,
right,
for where we go forward.
Yeah, and so there's, when I say it's non-binding, it really is. I mean, there's nothing in the agreement that legally requires the county to do anything, nor the city. It was meant as a front-facing document to tell every vendor, every contractor in the years ahead that, hey, you don't have to just come meet with the mayor and take his word for it, or the county administrator or a county commissioner, and where you'd say, well, how's your relationship with the city, or how's it with the county? We'd have an actual document that says, hey, we're good, and we want to move this project together. So I don't know that desire has changed. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that because this didn't get done, I think that we aren't going to work together. I don't feel that. I understand their confusion, and that was not our intent, but certainly on our side, as you mentioned earlier, by any means. But I don't get the feeling from the 5 county commissioners that there's an unwillingness to work together at this point. So I hope we can kind of just dust ourselves off and kind of figure out how to move forward. And frankly, if that's with an MOU or it's not, to prove the point, it's non-binding, we don't really need it. All the other things that are kind of spelled out in there are pretty much already spelled out. But I'm kind of putting that back in the hands of the county at this point. If they want to get us a document they're good with, and we do it the inverse way, I'm fine with that. Or if we just end up moving on, without it, if that's the best path forward, then we'll consider that. But I think maybe taking a pause here. I kind of like. Maybe the idea is, we've got a great economic development office. I know the county's setting one up. Maybe one concern I think we all generally have is like, who owns it? Who wakes up every day? It's hard for 5 county commissioners. It's hard for 1 mayor or 7 city council members to be the project manager, so to speak, internally. One brainstorming idea we've kind of had in here is, what if we get, Steve and his team together with Rick and their team, let that maybe at the economic development level, because economic development is so much bigger than just the construction. Maybe we've got 1 or 2 people waking up every day helping move this thing forward. That might be a little more efficient. That's just a brainstorming idea. I don't know if they'll go for that, but that's what I mean by dust ourselves off. Let's kind of figure out what's that next pivot to get this thing moving. Anything else? Yes, sir.
On the Birdon, you mentioned the noise study.
Yeah.
What was, I know it's still preliminary and there's waiting, but what was your, I guess, take on it, seeing those?
No, well, the early indications now qualified by, obviously, we have someone who on our team that's going to analyze this, is there's no immediate red flags from the initial report that we got. So that there isn't. So the extra work that they have to do was like another scenario. It wasn't, oh, there's a huge red flag that they got to go work on. It wasn't anything like that. There was just, remember, there's shift changes and there's different hours and there's what if the doors are open and closed. I learned a lot about the science of how you study noise and what the baseline is and all of that. So, speaking as an unqualified participant in the meeting, there's no immediate red flags, but we can't formally or officially say that until we have this one other scenario and that our expert reads through it. But that's my general feeling at this moment.
And then on the obviously when the governor awarded the $9 million for the project, but I think in the Triumph application y'all had said y'all were expecting $14 million from that source. Where does that leave the project, like overall funded?
Well, remember, this is nothing new when you have several funding streams coming in. This was, we have experience with this with American Magic. Our first project cost estimate on American Magic, if memory serves, is like $10 million, and by the time you're done, it's at 18, and then you got to go figure out how to scramble. Actually, the governor shortchanged himself. I think he said 3.9 million. He gave us 5.5. He initially gave us 3.9, and then because of other overruns, exactly what you're asking, we went back and got another 1.6. So obviously we're aware of that. There's a certain number that we have to get to, but there's many options for us. Secondly, we have other grants that we're waiting on, like the U.S. The Commerce grant. We've gotten some very positive indications about that, but what's the final number there? So we're going to kind of collect all of these amazing contributing pieces that we have, and then see where we go from there. And there's a multitude of options. There can be what we did in the American Magic project is we advance some rent. And remember that's new money. That's money that isn't being collected right now. So that's one way to attack it. We could work with Birdon themselves, but we can't get too much into to battle plan there until we really understand what the final delta might be, including cost estimates coming in. The nice part is the $9 million can be used on anything, so that it isn't only for physical construction or anything like that. It can be used on design and all of that. So none of that really has to slow down. We will have to address that, obviously, when we bring in a lease to council. That will probably be the first time that we'll have to address that. So, we might come up with some alternate plans of, hey, if the delta stays at $5 million, then we're going to advance rent. There's lots of different scenarios. So the point is, to your question, we're aware of that we've got some more dollars to go find, but we're not in any. We're not concerned about that at this point. It's kind of too early to be concerned about that. There's many options, including when a new governor gets in, they also have a job growth grant fund. So we can tap into those dollars. All of those don't need to be in-house by tomorrow or by next week or by the time it goes to Triumph. We just have to understand and recognize the obligation. So we'll see. But we're aware of that. Really, I believe what it sounds like is out of the governor, out of respect for the next governor, whoever that ends up being, is leaving job growth grant fund money, for that partial budget year. So again, there's no rule that says that we wouldn't be able to go back to the next governor and close up that delta, nor could the potential price or estimate go down. So there's just a lot of moving parts to it at this point. But that $9 million is a big chunk to have gotten, and our team worked really hard on it, and we're certainly appreciative of Secretary Kelly and the governor for helping us fill it.
And one thing when going, I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, if with the Triumph grant going into October, do you'll have a better sense of when Birdon will actually start operations and when construction will be in the fall?
No, I wouldn't say that we would be able to put a day or month on it at this point. I mean, we could guess, but what I could tell you is Birdon has significant urgency to be on port ASAP. I'm talking about before even the construction of the $104 million building. So I think that there's going to be opportunity for presence there. I think Birdon's very interested in our trajectory and in our urgency with the inland port. I think that there's a lot of those 2,000 jobs that don't even need to physically be on the water. And so they've been very proactive, and I mean that even from a financial interest standpoint. They've been very proactive in the idea of getting an inland port up and going. So I would say, if I had to generalize it, I'd say they're as, if not more urgent to get on port and to get going than we are. So we're not worried about a lack of motivation or that they want to slow roll this. I think they want to go bid on contracts and bring these jobs in, and have as defined a timeline as possible. So we're doing everything we can to accommodate them and move at the same aggressive pace that they want to.
That sort of leads into what my question was going to be. When being on the port last week, and you look at how much GE is taking up so much land space with their next shipment. Yeah. The need for an inland port seems to be bigger now than ever. What kind of timeline are y'all working on with that? Well,
there's two aspects to it. There's the private property along that I know Birdon has some interest in, and that's what I mean is they could end up moving it a lot faster than if, for example, if Birdon were to go purchase property, and whether that became a lease back to the port or something like that, that's going to go much faster. As you know, government is not known for its speed. So to show their urgency, they have some interest in some type of partnership like that, just to be able to count on it and get it going. And I've had some initial conversations with Florida West and with Commissioner May, where I think we're meeting on Friday. I believe, or if not, it's next week. Yeah, it's Friday. And to just have a conversation around what about the 30 acres of property that the county owns that's contiguous to the area they're looking at, and what if we can make a 90-acre opportunity for job creation? And that's not just Birdon. To your point, that would be enormous for GE, and growth, and they could have jobs on the inland port and off Scenic Highway. So there's just so much opportunity there that is not exclusive to Birdon, but all the ancillary companies that will certainly be interested in Pensacola once Birdon's up and going, lay down space, all that. And so even with a Superfund site where maybe you can't do a lot of vertical construction, you can absolutely put nacelles there. I've heard Commissioner May for a long, long time, ever since one of the largest displacements and moves of folks in the history of this country, an enormous project, is he's promised jobs. And as me and him have talked about it, is to say, man, could there be a bit more ripe opportunity to have an inland port to be able to leverage not just what can you do with 30, what if you take 30 and make it 90 and really, really put a rail spur, be able to do all those things. So I couldn't think of a better collaborative opportunity with the county and Florida West for us to say, let's put our heads together and really make a awesome inland port that we're talking about hundreds, if not over 1,000 jobs that could be potentially out there depending on what gets built.
And just to clarify, you're talking about the Midtown
That's right.
Park at East Cambia.
Yeah, and not getting ahead of them. That's their property. All that, we've obviously had conversations with them, and there could be reasons maybe it does work, or if Florida West is working on prospects and things like that. So no, it's certainly not pressure from us, but it's just too good of a collaboration to not explore. And if we end up not working out, no hard feelings. But that's why we want to meet Friday. Let's talk through it. And county knows a lot more about that dirt than we do. What do we need to know? And does this, Commissioner May's made a promise to citizens. I can certainly relate to that. We say we're going to do something. We want to make sure it fulfills the mission that he's promised the people that live in that area and did live in that area. So that's what this first kind of initial kickoff is about. Is let's see if it works, and if there's some smoke here to make this happen. But I'm excited for it. I think there's some promise there, and we'll see what happens.
One more question.
Yeah.
The Workforce Summit next week.
Yes.
What's the lineup looking like? I know you sent out a lot of invitations.
Yes.
Who do you have coming?
I can get you the exact list. We'll get it to you today so far of RSVPs. What do we have, 20, 29, something like that, 34? Yeah. He's giving me the thumb to go higher. So, so I know RSVPs is well over 30 now. And that's, again, I believe Pensacola State. I know Northwest Florida State. I've talked to President Ponder over there about coming over. PSC.
Kelly.
What's that?
Secretary Kelly.
Secretary Kelly from Florida Commerce and I'm part of the Career Source Florida Board. How we've compounded this is the Career Source Florida Board meeting is in Pensacola at UWF the following day. So that's how we obviously piggybacked on that to say, man, we have a lot of thought leaders already here. And I can't remember, I'm sure it's been here before, but it's been, certainly not since I've been on the board has the meeting been here. It's usually it's been in South Florida or Central Florida. So it's a great opportunity to showcase. I think they're going to, all the Career Source folks and this group's going to go tour the American Magic building. And so, we're going to try to, certainly strut our stuff up here and and make sure that we're top of mind for all those folks. So is it 2:30 or 2 o'clock on August 26th? 2:30. Yeah. So I believe it's 2:30 to 4 in this room. I'm assuming. Obviously, you guys can feel free to come by. But yeah. So but we can get you whatever that list is or that list of invites. Anything else?
Well, if Rick's not going to ask this, I guess
Go
I'll
ahead.
ask it. Have you decided if you're going to run in 2030?
Yeah, I know. You're supposed to save that question for Rick, and I'll answer it in 2028 or 2029, like you said. No, I have asked enough of everybody around me to give it another 4. I'm sorry, Jim, you aren't going to be able to break 5 years in advance whether I'd run a third time. I have said it's an 8-year job to you many times, and you've reported it. But we got a lot of work to do. So, and the performance of that work is, I don't get to determine that. The citizens are going to determine that for us if we were even to entertain that. So, but check back with me in, I don't know, mid-2029. I'll let you know. Thanks, y'all.